Hello, this is going to be a walkthrough of the coding challenges that I posted on Classroom a few weeks ago. And the first one is to write a program that is basically going to be using a loop. I have copied and pasted my directions over, or I'm going to, and do a triple comment to comment them out. And so the whole idea here is that I'm going to make sure that you can use a decision statement, probably a counting variable, a summing variable, and be able to print some results and use a loop to terminate. So when it says write a program to ask the user for the names of their pets and their pets' ages, it should use a loop that terminates when the enter uses stop. It should keep track of how many pets and calculate their average age. You will need a counting variable and a summing variable. And so we are going to work on setting up a solution for this and then talk about how I will potentially grade it. I started writing some of the code, so this go a little bit quicker. When we keep track of counting and summing, I'm just going to create a count variable and start it at 0. And then I'm going to total up their ages, so please make your variables descriptive. So total age is going to start at 0. And then we prompt for the pet name and the pet age. And as long as they don't enter stop, then we're going to go ahead and start doing some calculating. So count is going to get assigned to count plus 1. That's going to count how many pets I have. And the total age, in order to do summing, we have to take the total age we had and then add the pet age. Please notice that that's an integer data type. And then this is the loop that's going to run, and because we are using a while loop with a stopping variable, we need to reprompt for that data as we continue the loop. So you prompt before the loop, and then you reprompt after, or excuse me, inside the loop in order to get that to work. Let me rearrange here just a little bit to make this a little bit neater. And then when we're all done, we want to calculate the average age. That's going to be outside the while loop. So I've totaled up all the ages, I have the count of the ages, and so I have the total number of pets, and then I want to calculate the average age. So average age is going to be something like the total age divided by the count. But I have to be really careful because this is where I would get an integer division error if I don't multiply one of these times a 1.0 to force it to be a double. And then my output is supposed to be something like, if we go back and take a look at what my output is, I want it to be something like you have 2 pets, their average age is yada yada yada. So we are then going to print you have, and using concatenation, the count variable, and their average age is something like this. And because those are also, let's see, average age, those variables are numbers. I'm going to have to go back and make sure that I cast this. And I also want to make sure that I take out the equals. So you have blank, I need to say pets, and then something like their average age is, and then average age, but I have to cast that as a string. And I'm sure there's going to be some type of a syntax error because I see I'm putting some Java in here already. So if we try to run this code and see if it's going to execute, we have a bad input, which probably means I did something with a parens. So let me debug this. Okay, I took a little bit of time to do some debugging. There are still some errors, but my error was that biggest error was that I didn't have this colon here at the end of the while, which is required in Python. Let's go ahead and run this code quick, and we're just going to enter a couple of animals. We're going to type in a few pet names, and we're going to enter their ages. There is going to see an error going on here. I'm going to enter stop, and then it asks me for the age of the pet. We'll fix that in a few minutes, but then it prints out you have 2 pets, their average age is 4.0. I did not check to see if that was correct for their average age, but I'm going to hope that it was. And then fix just a few things here at the output, but that reprompting of the pet age, or that we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is just prompt for the pet name And then we are only going to input the pet's age if we get inside that loop. And so if we do this, it should properly set up this program. And if we run and enter 2 more pets, we have Fido, and Fido has an age of 6. And then we have Bam Bam, which is a pet, and the age of that pet is 4. So that's going to be average of 10 if I say stop right now, and divided by 2, so that's going to be 5. So it looks like this code is executing. So this is similar to what you will have on your assessment, where you're going to have to use a counting variable of some sort, a summing variable of some sort. You'll have to use a loop that has a termination event, and then you'll have to do some calculations and then output the data in a correct format. Please notice a few things, and I didn't put in here that you guys will need to put in your name, document your name in there. You should always do that, etc. And we can delete out these comments now. And then you could do the assignment so that when you turn this in, I know who it is from and what it's for. But look at the descriptive names, notice the camel casing, notice the white space in the code, proper indentation. Of course, you can't do improper, well, you could do improper indentation in Python, but it's not. It is not really going to let you do improper indentations, etc. But just take a look at this code, and that would be an example of a successful solution to that first problem. The second problem we're going to tackle is to print the following using 3 loops, and it's just basically an open rectangle. And so it's to recognize that you are going to have to use some different loops in order to print that design. So we're going to start this all over. You will have your name and the assignment or the exercise in there. And our design that we want to print is, remember, going to be something like the asterisks, well, whatever symbol I pick, and then an open rectangle. And you also want to make it so that it could potentially work for any asterisks, which I might ask you to do. But the trick here is, because you kind of know that you're going to have a certain number of items in this line, you can do a loop. So for x in range, and it can be, I'm just going to say 8. Well, let's go 10. I'm going to make it 10. Then what we're going to do is print x, and then we could do the end is blank, and that should, and I'm going to kind of test this as we go, that should right there should run just the line across, and of course I'm forgetting my colons when I'm doing that, and it prints 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 because I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. So I want to print that asterisk going across, so there's my row of asterisks. Okay, so then the next thing I need to do is I need to print this next line. Now what we don't want you to do is just to say something like, for example, print, and then try to do a, the asterisk and so many spaces and then an asterisk. That's not going to work. You're always going to have to figure out how many spaces are in here, and the number of spaces is in this case going to be 2 less than this number right here. So that number right there is really kind of like the length of my rectangle that I want to create. It's the length, or we could think of it as the width of the rectangle going across. And so actually I'm going to assign that to a variable and see if I can work with that. Then the other thing that we might want to do is consider the height. And the height of the rectangle is going to be just however many high we want to make it. In this case it's 4. And so when I decide to print, I have to kind of figure out that I am going to print a certain number of asterisks. And so I'm going to print the asterisk, and then I'm going to print spaces. That's going to be the width -2, and then I'm going to print another asterisk. That's what I want to be doing. And so when I do this, I really kind of have to build a string or build this kind of output. So I think I'm going to say that my my row 2, for example, is going to equal, and I'm going to start it with an asterisk, and then I'm going to have another for loop that's going to be x in range of width minus 2 because I know I don't need as many spaces as the full width. And then I'm going to take and say row 2 is equal to row 2 plus a space. And that should get all my spaces. And then outside that loop, I'm going to say row 2 is going to equal row 2 plus the final asterisk on the end. And then I can just print row 2, so to speak. If I run that, it runs, except for the fact that I did not do a blank print statement in between those 4 loops, so I have to do a print in between them. And that print is just a blank print, which means it's going to hit return. So right now I've kind of got this going. And then I have to decide, well, how many times do I need to print row 2? This itself will be in a for loop, and that for loop is going to be in a range of the height minus 2, because I need 2 less than the height. So however many long the height is, I'm going to print that. Forget my colon, run the code, and see if it executes. It is not liking something because I am trying to rush too much, and I've now put my computer into insert mode. So we've got all kinds of things going on. I'm almost there. I just now need to recopy my for loop that I started with, which is going to be my that first row. And that first row gets repeated at the bottom. And so I'm going to have a design that looks something like this. And it's kind of versatile because now if I wanted to, I could change the height and I could change the width to however many that I want, and it should execute accordingly.